Ah, what a fun and full day it's been.
Indeed.
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
Hi, Lucita. Welcome. Good to see you. We were just saying what a full day it's been. Mike and I have our class today, so we start the morning off teaching class, which was on the G Center today. And it was good. It was just such a deep discussion. And our third week of teaching the Centers class, and all 3 weeks have been somewhat intense, starting with the solar plexus and then the ego, and now the G Center. And then there were a couple other sessions today, and now we're celebrating our good friend Krista Bauman, who has arrived in Santa Fe. So welcome, Krista. You made it.
Hey.
Oh, good to see you. If you don't mind, you can say hi. It's okay if you like. Either way.
I'll get in the camera.
Yeah, get on the camera.
Come on.
Get right here. Get right here. Yeah, Krista just moved here from Michigan, so she's really excited to be with friends and having a wonderful. I mean, was it a good? Hopefully, it was a good trip. So.
Oh yeah. So everything went super smooth. It was a good trip. And there was a rainbow as soon as I got off. Right when I landed in Albuquerque, rainbow.
Yeah, that's such a good sign to see a rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Nancy. Good to see you as well. So yeah, I was just saying, Mike and I had a really full day, starting the day off with Centers class, and then we went deep into Magic Square with James Alexander. He did a special session on Signpost, and we looked at some very deep aspects of Magic Square and what happens with resonance to the nodes and some very cool interpretive techniques. Then Mike had a great conversation with Teresa Brenneman. So I know he's a little talked out today, so we will.
I want to watch this one.
Yeah, we will respectfully allow Mike to be, to not be. And hi, I see Ricky's on, and good to see you, Ricky. Nancy, Marissa. So so today we're going to do a fun game. We haven't done this for a while. It's the polarity game. So we're going to start with any gate that someone wants to start with, talk a little bit about that gate, and then look at its polarity. And then we can either go to its harmonic or its polarity's harmonic, and we kind of move our way around the wheel. There's really 3 moves you can make from a gate. You can go to the next gate in the wheel, you can go to the opposite gate, or you can go to its harmonic gate. Hey Richard, good to see you. Hey, I'm gonna get the audio working. I think you might have it muted. So, all right. Yeah, speaker.
You want to?
Hey, you guys, I was on mute. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, we're all good. We're all good.
Sorry about that. Hi, Ricky. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're all good. So, Mike, would you mind passing me that book over there? I have a handy copy of Aloknand Diaz, The 64 Gates, which is nice just because it has the Rave Mandala on the front, so it becomes very easy to quickly reference, and you can do this with it, which is always fun.
Half of a lot of space. Yeah.
Right up there for people to see. So that's always fun. All right, so who has a gate that they would like to start with? Maybe somebody's personality sun, a gate they've been learning about.
49.
Gate 49. Okay, wonderful. So to start with, we kind of just talk about Gate 49, what it is, what it's here for. We can look at some of the keynotes for it. When I think of 49, I think of principles and the principles of the tribe, having principles, having standards that one kind of uses those standards to then discern who violates them and is expelled or rejected or who obeys them. I see it in relationship to its harmonic, the 19, which is approach, and is we see in, for instance, flirting behavior and kind of the connections that a 19 is always cute and is cutely approaching, and the 49 is there to say, okay, I like you, now you will never flirt with anyone else ever again. That's sort of the rub of the 49 with its possessive tribal nature. And I've seen 49s in my life where there's a sort of straw that broke the camel's back theme of their principles are violated and it seems like such a minor thing, and then they kick somebody out of the house or something like that, and you go, why did you do that just for this one thing? And they say, well, it's not that one thing. It's something they did 6 months ago and a year ago and a year and a half ago. And all of these things coalesce and build up until they can't take it anymore and they just reject them. If anyone else has anything they'd like to share about 49, I'd love to hear it.
Well, it's also like you need the thing that that violates your principles to be something you can point to, so you can feel like the person is already, whatever, not fitting in with the principles, but they're not doing anything to expose that fact. There's nothing about their behavior that you can say that goes against my principles. So it could be when they finally do something, even if it's small, at least you can use that as a catalyst to talk about the deeper thing.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to put your finger on what that violation is. For instance, we know a man who is either a personality sign 49 or some. What is 49 an Aquarius or is 49? Yeah. Okay, so I believe he's a personality sign 49, but in any case, yeah. So part of his principles, and I think the principles of a lot of 49s are a sort of implicit conservatism around possessions and around relationships, where Ra would always say in a household with a 49, well, a couple things: keep the fridge full, and no single people. No single people of adult age, because that causes a problem. And so this man we know who's a 49 has this incredible home and is a single person and had a housemate who's also a single person. And this housemate was polyamorous and had 3 or 4 girlfriends and got kicked out for it. But you can't just tell somebody you're kicking them out for having 4 girlfriends.
Right.
So he had to find a reason to kick him out.
Right.
The principles were violated in some way. It was disrespectful and so on. Kind of that kind of thing.
Did I show you my 49 meme or my 1949 meme?
No, I don't think so.
It's a good one. It's a good one. About the no single people thing.
This is going to be a very basic question, but your incarnation cross always contains polarity between sun and earth, right?
Yeah, it always contains 2 polarities, and that's not too basic a question. That's a great question, because it is these fundamentals that are so important. It's going to be the polarity between your sun and earth, which are 180 degrees apart, in opposition in astrology.
Yeah.
And then there's the 88-degree retrograde motion of the sun and its polarity. So
And you said there's 4 channels that have polarities, so 3 crosses that automatically have a form a channel.
Yeah, I mean, there's more crosses than that, because some channels are formed by the 88-degree calculation as well.
I see.
But yeah, the 3 oppositions are the 3740, the 2343, and 3420.
Yeah, I asked about 49 because I was curious about that and the 4. That's the meme, so flip through those.
Oh, well, we're going to have to share this with people online. They'll see my reactions to it. They'll just see my reactions. This.
I think about this all the time with 1949.
The 1949's work is never done. Yeah. So this is. I'll see if people can actually see it or not. I don't know if that's gonna.
Yeah, they can see that. So
Okay.
just flip through them. There's just 6 slides.
And then can we make it full screen? Is that a way?
That's on Discord, or you can just forward it and you can put it in
No.
chat.
Not everybody's on there. How do I make it full screen? Can we pin spotlight for everyone. There we go. So
So
here's
everyone should be
And
paired up.
the text is backwards, so
Yeah.
you'll have to.
no, it's not. It fixes it.
Okay. Doop.
The baby is paired up with a cactus. It's like you're both basically inanimate. That's pretty cute. 1949's work is never done. Well, thank you for that, Mike. Yeah. So if anybody has any comments on the 49, do you how do you see the 49? Ashley, do you ever? Do you have that gate?
No.
Okay. You're like no. Kind of a strong reaction there.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about her.
Well, you have an undefined solar plexus. Do you ever notice? I have an undefined solar plexus, and I will notice myself getting possessive or jealous in a weird way, like a generalized possessiveness when I'm around a 1949 sometimes.
Huh.
I mean, it's not
I have
always.
40, so. It's a
You have
couple
40,
of-
which is part of that same stream
Yeah.
you're saying. Yeah,
like a
that's,
couple times.
that's where it ends up. Yeah, that stream from 1949 to 37 to 40.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
I
let's-
can say something.
yes. Any comments on the 49?
Yeah, so I have it as a hanging gate. Consciously. And in a defined solar plexus. And I can definitely relate to the possessiveness and the, let's see. Yeah, but it's like I was trying to think of an example of when, I would feel like principles were violated. I guess maybe I don't know, a boundary that has been pre-established or that gets transgressed.
Yeah, if a boundary is transgressed, then some reprisal must happen in terms of rejection.
Mm-hmm. Is that where the butcher nickname comes from?
I mean, that's also just it's the
Husband,
fact that
animal
it's
husbandry and
it's
stuff.
interspecial, yeah, with animal husbandry. So what does this have to do with gate 4? That's the real question. That gate 4, it's polarity. And Johnny, can you figure out how to make that go back to normal? I think we just tried to remove spotlight in the top left there. Yeah, there we go. Now we can all see everybody. So this is kind of the interesting mystery when you end up, so gate 49, the gate of rejection, the gate of principles. It's also called revolution, which is interesting. I always think of the French Revolution where they were guillotining all of the royalty and so on. And then here we have Alok to the rescue. I didn't realize he was going to talk about the polarity immediately, but
Wow,
he does.
cool.
To understand its principle, you have to come to its polarity, gate 4.
How about
Now, before I read what he says, do we have any ideas what 49 might have to do with 4? We know that 4
Is logic.
is logic, it's formalization, it's in the ajna, so it's about knowing things, knowing the answers, answering questions, it's pattern matching, it's
I have 4.
skeptical. You have 4?
Mhm.
Yeah, I have 4 also.
It's the second line, so
Yeah.
I don't.
You don't like answering the questions. People ask you a lot of them,
Yeah.
and you're not a
Yeah.
fan of them. Yeah.
I think that 4 brings the logical understanding of the revolution. Am I heard?
Yeah, no, you're heard. You're heard. I was just telling Mike that.
Brings the logical is the way that 49 is able to bring its sustainability into the world is through 4. I think without 4, 49 is a little bit over the top without being able to anchor the understandings in, the butcher. I think about the butcher and I think about him cutting all of these pieces of meat. But as the hunter, I want you to use every single piece of it. But that's not always necessarily healthy for the tribe or the right thing for all of us to do. And 4 helps us understand the places and pieces and parts where everything goes in order for it to be healthy for all of us.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting relationship. I mean, it's also interesting to see if we start at any given gate, it's almost like a board game, like Chutes and Ladders or something, where you have the polarity, you have the harmonic, I'll let Johnny figure out what he's doing here.
There, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to connect to Wonderboom there.
Great.
Great.
No,
So yeah, it's kind of like a board game where you have these different moves you can make and different relationships. Now, of course, in 3 cases, the polarity is the harmonic. That is, the channel is made up of the polarity, but that's the exception, not the rule. In the other 29 cases, I guess, right, there is a polarity that's not the harmonic. So you have 29 polarities that don't form channels, and then 3 that do.
Let's see how far we can get going successively from where we are.
Yeah, let's do that. I was just going to say, in terms of games to play, one of the fun... So this one we can alternate polarity, harmonic, polarity, harmonic. The other fun game to play, if you have the Ray V Ching, is to start with the first line of a gate, then skip over to its 6th line, and then the first line of the next gate, and then the 6th line. You have a story there as well. For instance, just to do that quickly, as a brief example of that, you have something like gate 8, which is the contribution, right? It's going to contribute to something, and then by the time you get to the end of it, it says, but there's got to be more than this. There's got to be more than just me expressing myself to the other. What is there? Well, gate 20. The zen of the now, the pure existential moment. I am now free from my need to contribute. I am purely in the moment. But by the time you get to the end of 20, line 6, the end of 20 is looking at gate 16, which says, okay, this now is fine, but if I actually practice something, I can actually improve, I can actually get better. So it practices and practices, and if you know gate 16, which is all about like the piano player practicing for hours, but then finally they say, but what is all this practice for if I'm never going to actually put it into practice in the world? I've just been studying this whole time, but I need to actually get on stage. So what's next? 35, experience. They need to get out there and have the experience. But by the end of 35, they say, well, not all experiences are equal, and they're looking at 45, money. You want to have a good experience, you got to have money for that experience, and so on. So you can kind of play this game where the wheel moves around the mandala, the gates move around the wheel, but then also you can go to the oppositions, and then of course there's the relationships of the harmonics, of the channels. And so there's kind of these 3 different relationships that gates will have. There's probably more than that. I mean, you can look at the relationship to other gates and streams and so on, but or the godheads or things like that. Okay, so we have 49. Let's hear what Alok Diaz says, that gate 49 doesn't think. You know why? Because there is a given set of instructions that is already there. There are patterns. Patterns means first there was God. God created Adam. Out of Adam he took a rib and created Eve. And then these 2, they ate of the tree of knowledge, which means they had sex together. And because they enjoyed such heavenly delights, they were condemned out of their innocence and had to figure out the consequences of sex, the loss of innocence. And these principles are the principles that say how a man and woman can be happy together by the law of God. And God says that Eve is there to give Adam his children for no other purpose. So all women wear a burqa. This is his interpretation of it. Well, that's a very interesting reading of gate 4 and of the logic there. I mean, but I do see that, this is the pattern that is emulated for the principles to be enforced, that we can't have principles unless there is some sort of pattern there, some formula. This is the formula. Man plus woman equals child, family, bonding for family, for tribe, things like that. So yeah, I don't know that really goes deeply into the 4 as its, if we can call it support or complement or 2 sides of the same coin, that 49 and 4 are 2 different ways of approaching the same problem in some ways. They don't seem on the surface to have much to do with each other, the tribal versus the logical and so on.
They are both very much like that won't fly. So 49, obviously, it's like these are principles or whatever. Or I know when I see it, I know that violates the principles. And 4, like the youthful folly is being able to answer a question about anything, even if it's nothing you've thought about before, because you're able to quickly parse well, that's not, like, this answer is better than nothing. Like, I can come up with something, I can conjure something, you know, so that it's not, whenever people answer from the 4, it doesn't mean they're always going to be right, but it's going to be typically like a good enough answer, or an answer that goes somewhere, you know. So you're not willing to say something dead end with gate 4, you know.
And you can see that they're both somewhat conservative or skeptical, even though we imagine that logical circuitry is so forward thinking and predictive. But if we look at the 63-4, this is sort of the refusal to think about things that don't pass the test of being worthy to think about. In the same way that 49 may reject, right? It might reject someone who doesn't embody those principles. 4 might reject a question or an idea or anything as not worthy of thinking about. We have a design of mental stillness, actually, there. Right. Okay, well, if anyone has any more comments, otherwise we can move from 4 to its harmonic 63. This will bring us into cross of consciousness territory. Johnny is at cross of consciousness here.
Just generally too, 49 always seems much more trigger happy than the whole channel. Like 1949 people, it's supposed to be the channel of sensitivity, but I never necessarily sense their sensitivity in like an oversensitive way. But then they'll tell me stories of like they cut off a friendship because they used a certain word or they said something in a mean way, and I'm like, I never experienced that with you, so it's so interesting to hear those stories.
Well, and that's also kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back, where there's one final thing that makes them cut off that friendship, but actually they've been testing the person the whole time to see whether they have principles or not, whether they're a person of their word, can they be trusted, and
right, like over time, seeing if their principles.
Yeah, and then finally it's some minor thing, what seemingly minor thing, and you go, wow, you cut that amount for that, that's kind of wild. Yeah, and I've seen the 1949 electromagnetic with undefined solar plexus, and that's a tricky one, because that 49, when things get too emotional, too intense, they have a tendency to put the brakes on it, instead of kind of letting it see where it would go. So I guess there is a tendency in both 4 and 49 to preemptively reject or be overly skeptical in some sense. All right, so from the 49 we go to the 4, and then its harmonic, the 63. So I'll jump over to 63 here. Any ideas about 63? This is the gate of doubt. This is really, if you have an undefined head and you have gate 63, I mean, good for you for getting into human design, because this is one of those gates that will often doubt the validity of human design. And if you have a defined head, it can be even harder, because you will withstand all these people pressuring you to think about it, unless, again, it passes muster in some sense. But yeah, 63 is one of those interesting gates where when you get to the head, it's just such an unusual center. I mean, it's the only center that sticks out above the body. If you look at the actual body graph, and it's funny that the personality crystal kind of going to the top of the head center, it's like, it's pulled into the vehicle. It's not even in the vehicle. It's like riding on top. It's like sitting on top of the car. It's not even quite there. Or what Ross said about the 63 and the 64, that they're like looking up through the sunroof and seeing interesting shapes go by, but not necessarily looking out the window and seeing what others see. So if anyone has comments on the 63 and its relationship to the 4, or we'll look at its polarity in a moment, but just understanding it more deeply. That it's the pressure to solve, the pressure to know. It's what pressures the 4 to answer the question. It comes up with the doubts. It comes up with the reasons why something might not be true, and all of the questions that ultimately lead to other questions, right? It's basically, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin? If God is all good, how did God create evil? But if he couldn't create evil, then he's not all powerful, because that's beyond his power. These are the kinds of questions that gate 63 comes up with. You have gate 63 as part of your incarnation.
I do. It's my sun, my Earth.
Yeah,
personally Earth.
Yeah, because he's a Virgo cross of consciousness, and that's also funny. The Virgo cross of consciousness is abstract, and the Pisces cross of consciousness is logical.
Mm.
And I've never heard Pisces described as logical. That is not a keynote that you will find anywhere in astrology. So
It's my daughter. My daughter has it as her son, her Pisces sun, and also her South Node. So, but
Yeah.
with her, she's incredibly logical.
okay, yeah, you're saying that she's a very logical person, even though she's a Pisces.
It's
Yeah.
it's logic to it's
So
logic
this is-
it's logic to it's almost illogical. It's so logical. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, well, in our
like there's
films-
no fighting with her
We have an
because she
awesome-
has
yeah.
all the
Yeah.
facts. Because she's looked at.
I would say if you want to, you can always jump on for a
Oh.
moment. If you want to say,
Sorry.
just so people can see who's talking, because off camera talking is
sorry,
always
I
a
won't
little.
do it.
Just for a second, just to wave or just say hi or something.
I identify as logical as well.
Yeah.
But no, but I was just going to say we have a friend who's a Pisces cross of consciousness, and it is logical. It's just such, it's like you're saying, it's like hyper logical beyond the point of what a normal logical idea would be. It's that same kind of logic that says if God is all powerful, it's like checking for the soundness of something
Right.
Mhm.
in such an extreme way. Well, if God's all powerful, he can create evil. But if he can create evil, then he's not all good.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so if he's all good, he can't be all powerful. And if he's all powerful, he can't be all good. Touche, logic, QED.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but this is like such a head thing,
Mhm.
right? The pressure to solve this. Because that's the kind of question that's not even about expressing knowledge, which I think resides more in the ajna. The head is expressing pressure,
Mhm.
the pressure to fuel the quest for knowledge.
Mhm.
It's not even that the head knows something. They don't even know if that's valuable or valid or important or reasonable or unreasonable or creative or said it before, any of that.
Mhm.
It's literally, it's like the cross of tension, but for the head, you know?
Mm.
It's like the tension to think about things. So I don't know if you I know you have an open head ajna. Do you get pressured into thinking about things a lot? Yeah, I certainly do. By this guy.
Yeah. I would say with my open head, I got the 64. I'm just looking for the answers.
If you want to for a minute, you can
I've
say
been
hi.
traveling for 12
Yeah.
hours now.
Well, I'm not going to force you to stay here the whole time you don't want to, but you're more than welcome to stay there. So,
Yay, Krista!
I mean, this is because the timing worked out perfectly that you arrive in Santa Fe at 5:55 p.m. and we start at 6, and so I appreciate you just joining right off the 12 hours of travel. So, and you made it. It's a great welcome, I hope. So, okay, so we have gate 63, the gate of doubt. What Alok says about it is that it's pressuring for an answer. Give me an answer. Why is everything the way it is? Why is it supposed to be like that? And then it's like this. You know? Well, because you're supposed to do it. It's up to you. That's the answer. Yeah, they're not happy with that answer. And it's basically, this is after completion is the name, and it's the gate of doubts. The doubt is, will it be okay if I just take what I need? Is it okay to take what I need even if it's not mine? I need it, I want it, it's there. Can I take it? You know, and this is all the doubt. What's right and wrong? What do we do? I mean, it's yeah, and it's interesting. It's polarity being the 64. Let's see if he talks about that. I mean, do we have any ideas, first of all, why these are polarities? I mean, obviously they're both in the head center. They're both pressures.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
For like having both 64 and 63, this polarity makes a lot more sense, or at least more intuitive than say 49 and 4 being, at least they're in the same center, but they're like left brain, right brain maybe in some sense. One's the understanding circuit, one's sensing. You go from logic to abstract. And so maybe they're two sides of the same coin, and so
yeah,
that
two
being-
ways to pressure, like
Yeah.
pressuring the question, like the logical pressure to answer the question, to come up with a formula,
Mm-hmm.
versus 64 being the abstract pressure to make sense of these confusing images.
Yeah.
I always think of 64 as having a lot of mental activity. So if you find a 64-47, there's somebody who can have a flurry of images and a very mythopoetic imagination and full, rich, kind of wet brain imagination. Whereas the 63-4 will often refuse to even think about something. They're like the smooth operator. They have a cool cold brain system, mind system that is refusing to even think about it. You're like, you can think about it. They're like, why would I think about that? They have their own doubts. They're doubting if what you're doubting is even worth doubting. They're doubting if your question is even worth asking. So there's a real skepticism of the 63-4 where they won't even bother thinking through things a lot of times to even check if they're logically sound, because they're so preoccupied with what they are curious about, what they are trying to solve. They're not trying to solve your problem, they're trying to solve their problem. Now, undefined center, hanging 63, well, that's different. It can lend itself to ideating questions. But yeah, I just see that whole channel as a very dry refusal to think about something compared to the 64-47, which can have a flurry of images, but they're basically going, what do all these images mean? What is the narrative? What is the thread? How do I connect them? Yeah, so it's...
I have like a confusion that I'm like, 64 is a gate that is in the sensing circuit and it's past oriented, even though it's the final gate. 63 comes before it and future sensing. You'd think the future sensing would be the last gate, but
well, they're also, well, I don't know about that, because there is no future after 64.
Well, true.
So what is it looking towards? I mean, you can only look back. You get to the end, you can only really look back at what came before, because there's nothing ahead of it. But on the other hand, I do see what you're saying, and there is this weird complexity where 64 is before completion and 63 is after completion.
Yeah.
So even their names have this weird reversal. And then Ra gives us a very mysterious statement, which is that there aren't really 64 gates, because 1 and 2 are the same gate, and 63 and 64 are outside of the gates. They're almost like blueprints or archetypes. And so you really only have 61 gates, because 1 and 2 are the same, and 63 and 64 aren't even there.
And those are all the gates that are formed of one base. So obviously gate 1 is all yang, 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 gate 2 is yin, 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 and then 63 and 64. 63, the logic one, is just the base 2, base 2, base 2. So
right.
Mind to mind, mind. And 64 is base 4, base 4, base 4.
Yeah, design. Yeah, that's a really good point, that these are the gates that repeat the same 2 lines over and over. And there's only 4 combinations of 2 lines. It's either yan yan, yin yin, yan yin, or yin yan. And those 4 possible permutations of 2 lines are repeated for gate 1, gate 2, gate 63, and gate 64. So they are kind of special cases there. Yeah.
And we also don't have a story without 1 and 2 coming together, and without 63 and 64 coming together, and 63 being truth and of the story that has just happened, and 64 being the illumination of the story that is about to begin, being that they're both outside of the whole structure itself.
I really like that. Well, let's see what Alok has to say about it. He says, 63, the gate of doubt, when you look at its polarity, you get 64. Gate 64 is up there in the same center, in the head center. And these are 2 mental pressure gates. Gate 63, the gate of doubt, is the hexagram before the last. So it's the penultimate. And the Chinese named this hexagram after completion. Its subtitle says, in the spiral of life, every end is a new beginning. So you're absolutely right, Brandy. In a story, that's kind of the denouement, where you see it's all starting over again, or you see that life goes on, or there is some continuation. It is the sort of necessary flourish at the end of the story that says the end is a new beginning.
And I think it teaches us about algorithmic fractal repetition. I think it lends itself to that knowing as well.
It means after every answer, there is once again doubt, that no answer would fully satisfy doubt. Although, as Ross says, that the 63 cost of consciousness, they continue asking questions with the hope of finding new questions that will obliterate their old questions. Sometimes finding a question so good it eliminates 1,000 questions that came before it.
Cool.
But ultimately what they're searching for is the question whose only answer is silence.
Nice.
And it's funny because U.G. Krishnamurti says the same thing about how the questions are ultimately yearning for a question whose only answer is silence. And I don't think Ra ever encountered his work, but there is an interesting sympathy between their thought. So after the answer, there is doubt again, particularly when these are answers that have no practical application in your life. These are the answers that multiply your questions. You go from 1 doubt to 10 doubts to 100 doubts to 1,000 doubts. You get intellectually sophisticated, but you still don't know what you need. You don't know what to do. You don't understand what your life is all about. You understand the world, you understand the others, you speak 15 languages, but you don't understand what you feel. And if you don't understand what you feel, you don't understand yourself. So he's showing how we can get so caught up in the head pressure to answer that it can completely remove us from who we are. Now its polarity, gate 64, is the last hexagram. And here the Chinese put their most paradoxical sense of humor by calling this last hexagram before completion or before conclusion. This is a gate that says at the end, it's just like we were at the beginning, not knowing what conclusion to make. This is before the conclusion was arrived at. We've gone past the conclusion back to a place where we don't know. And this is the gate of confusion. Confusion is the realization that you are not the only person who has questions, not the only person who thinks this matters or that matters. You're not the only person who's trying to get their message across. Everybody is. Everybody has a point of view. Everyone has their concerns. Everyone has their needs. Everyone knows how to rationalize them. So I guess it's these two gates together, the 64 and the 63, that are the two axes of the cross of consciousness. The voice of consciousness that tells you, well, it's my father, but he's not always right. It's my mother, but she's not always right either. It's me, but I'm not always right. There's doubt and confusion. The two sides of it.
Nice.
So we see 64, the gate of confusion, and 64 connects to gate 47. Now they are next to each other in the wheel, which is kind of interesting. So this is one of those relationships where the harmonic gate is also the adjacent gate. And earlier when we were playing the game of going around the wheel, going to the next gate, the next gate, the next gate, it's interesting.
So the 6th line of the 64 leads into the first line of 47.
Exactly. And I have the 64-6 actually, Mercury there, exalted. And that's in Virgo, and I remember studying astrology that, that's also an exaltation. So I thought when I saw in Human Design my 64-6 exalted, I thought, of course, it's Mercury. And what it really is about knowing that the confusion will be eliminated or that eventually the truth will win out. So laughing about the confusion and reveling in the confusion. And so I have the ability to go on the Human Design and Astrology Facebook group and see all these confused people talking about sidereal and not really be bothered by it in the way it gets under other people's skin, because I go, well, they're all very confused, but eventually they won't be.
But does it get under your skin?
I mean, I certainly answer it sometimes with my 4 when people ask questions. Why is sidereal the wrong system to use for the body graph calculation? How is sidereal used in global cycles? Things like this. But in terms of that 64-6, it's just kind of reveling in the confusion, knowing that with Augustine, the truth is like a lion, it can fend for itself. But yeah, when I see confusion, I just see all of the flurry of images that need to be made sense of, and how difficult it is, the pressure to make sense of them, the pressure to put together disparate images into a story. Which, by the way, if you ever hear a story from an abstract person, a 1333 or in this case 6447, all you're really getting is the connective tissue that they put together between the images. And the images, you might have evidence for that. Those might actually be facts. They can be factual. I arrived on this day, I left on that day, I spoke to the person at this time. It's kind of like in a police procedural where they're asking you for an alibi and all this stuff. But then they have to put together the connective tissue, because you say a number of facts, but what happened between the facts? Those facts punctuate the story, but the space between the notes is anyone's guess. And it's more about putting together a compelling story, like a story for a jury. well, it's true. Well, it doesn't matter if it's true. The jury might not believe it. In fact, they probably won't believe it because I'm your lawyer and I don't believe it even though I know it's true. I saw it with my own eyes and I still don't believe it because it's so far-fetched that you happen to be here at this time when that happened to happen and so on. So we have this gate of confusion, this abstraction, the mind looking at the past, reflecting on the past, trying to make sense of it. So this is very much, everything is fused together, nothing is separate, and then it's
One more thing about the 63, 64 while you're still there. There's like a particular kind of symmetry that they have. Like the 63 is the yang yin yang yin yang yin, and the 64 is the yin yang yin yang yin yang. And it's just like this final sort of like card shuffle of the lines. Like I like how it like starts with yang 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 yin 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 yin, and ends with them like being perfectly distributed.
Right. The beginning is the absolute segregation of yin and yang, and the end is the absolute integration of the two. That is a beautiful comment. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Alok has a lot of interesting comments here. I think let's just see how far we can get, like you were saying. So going to 47, and what 47 is about, and 47. Really making sense of things, making sense of the confusion, solving the confusion, right? But also oppression, and how funny that idea is. That
I mean, go back to polarity. So gate 64 is in the quarter of duality, and 63 is quarter of mutation or initiation.
Yeah. So. Right, exactly, because it's Pisces. So yeah, the quarters do also give us hints, and I skipped over much of it, but Alok was talking a lot about 64 and relationships, which is an interesting thing because being in duality, it does have something to do with that. Now, gate 47 is also in duality, and what Alok tells us is that we're dealing with a quartet of 4 gates embodied in the force we call harmonia. And that harmonia is the essence of relationships, the truly most essential that you can find in gate 64, the only gate where you find the triple yin-yang, as you were mentioning. In yin-yang, sustaining yin-yang, sustaining yin-yang. So it's like the full support of yin-yang supporting itself in its process.
Also known as base 4.
Yeah, but it's funny because in this case he's really saying that it's about relationship and that it is the most relational in some sense, which has a bit of dark humor, that confusion is the all and everything of relationships. And what do we get? We get a series of confusing images we have to make sense of. So basically confusion is different things mixed together, and that's what the relationship is, this mixing of lives with another person.
It's cliche to say, oh, my relationships are complicated, but and complicated, I think confusion is just another word to swap out for complicated,
Well, and it's also that relationship is about trying to have a successful relationship, which is the merging, that if 2 stay 2, that's a failed relationship. 2 have to become 1, so together they become 3. It's math. He says this is pure numerology. See? The 1 doesn't even exist without the 2. It's only from the 2 that you get to have oneness, because you yourself, me, myself, and I isn't even yet 1, because I don't even know that I exist until another person comes along. Now I have something to compare myself to, and the challenge of merging with them.
Isn't that how Thousand Plateaus begins? Is like each of us was already several, so together writing this book, we were quite a crowd.
Yeah, that is the first line of A Thousand Plateaus by Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari, an excellent book.
And talk about a card shuffle.
Yeah. So Alak tells us confusion is the essence of relationships, that harmony only comes back when you have a fight with those you are bonded with. So that fight, there's the separation and then the harmony to reunite with them, and it's like reuniting with a part of yourself.
Mm.
And then he has the header, what went wrong? That's why we need gate 47, oppression. Oppression is an ajna gate pointing at the head, pointing at the question, which is the same in this part of the wheel of what went wrong? In which moment did I say or do something that went wrong? Was it wrong when I said this, or was the other person understanding something I didn't mean? At what moment did they make me feel bad? I made them feel bad. That's the expression.
It's such a relatively abstract form of self-inquiry than before, which just finds whether it gets the answer, right? This is more, because it's like, even the fact that this is how the question answer of 6447 is phrased as a what happened there, you know, it's
Right.
like such an abstract
Who done
process.
it?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
very much, it is that police procedural who done it thing where you have
Past
to figure
reflective.
out, you figure out the story as opposed to coming up with the answers. That's so interesting. And there's the expression, you are making me feel bad. Language of blame. If you're emotional, nobody makes you feel anything. You breathe and you feel. So whatever it is you feel, you're making yourself feel that way.
Yeah, tell them.
Go out. The only person who can legitimately say you make me feel bad is the person who could say you make me feel good. And that is the unemotional one. The undefined solar plexus is the only one who can legitimately say to the other, you're making me feel good or you're making me feel bad. My favorite analogy, he says, is the difference between fire and gasoline. They both burn, only fire burns on its own. So the solar plexus defined is the fire that burns. The undefined is the gasoline. It needs the spark of the other.
I like the imagery.
Yeah. Yeah, so 47, I mean, this is now 47, oppression. It has many faces. We are all oppressed by someone, we all oppress someone else. So this is an abstract gate. It has nothing to do with will. You're not desiring. You're just trying to be yourself, but you make a joke and the other's offended. How can you make a joke about this? Someone in my family is suffering from this, and here you are making jokes, and that's how it happens. And then we oppress and we are oppressed. Now, if you read the third line of this gate, it's self-oppression. We oppress ourselves. And the fifth line is the saint. It's a funny one, yeah. So it's an interesting mystery. What is this oppression about? The oppression of knowing something. And it's basically, it can be the most oppressive thing in the world to be subject to someone else's knowledge. They're trying to tell you something, you would think it's a throat gate, but there's something oppressive about their solution to what happened. And they're telling you what happened, and they're telling you about their life, and there's an expression, trauma dumping. And a lot of times it's just story dumping, it's just feeling dumping. It has nothing to even do with trauma. It's just, this is who I am, this is my life, this is where I came from. And this can be oppression, and I think this is a hint, and I'm not making this up myself, this is something I've heard Alak say in talking about gate 22, which is the polarity of 47. Now, I know a lot about the 22. I didn't know as much about the 47. Why do I know so much about the 22? Well, I have a completely undefined solar plexus and I have a hanging 12. I also happen to have a hanging 64 in an undefined head. So this is a polarity that is actually very acute for me in my chart. This is one of the ways that Alak does polarity analysis, is to look at if you have hanging gates in undefined center, what are technically called dormant gates, and that you have two dormant gates that then their harmonics are a polarity,
Mm.
that's a very strong polarity for you.
Mm-hmm.
When I need a 2247, we immediately have 2 electromagnetics,
Mm.
and I get 4 centers defined.
Wow.
Right? That's a powerful, potent configuration.
Mm.
So it's something to look at in a chart, is to kind of analyze what polarities are very significant for you. But something that Alok said about 22, and I mean you were there. It was quite a whirlwind. We had something like 40 hours of Alok lectures in 2
Wow.
weeks.
Yeah.
But he went through many of the polarities, and you were there as well. And we had this great experience down in Costa Rica, where we met, actually, which was wonderful. Although I've known this guy for a long time. But what he said was that 47 and 22, that there's a relationship where 22 is the graceful listener that has the grace not to confront that 47, but just to nod and smile,
Mm.
while the 47 is experience dumping
Mm.
or whatever, right? And they're oppressing. You're stuck in the conversation. They've cornered you. They're talking your ear off. You can't escape. You're feeling that I just want to get out of here. But then that 22 knows to just smile and nod, and it's partly the knowledge that they're really oppressing themselves most of all. That 47 is. So why add fuel to the fire? Why not just be graceful about it? And then when you have the chance to duck out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I don't see the 22 is part of the individual circuit. So shouldn't it be more depth than say 47 in the collective circuit, or?
There are 3 channels in particular that we call depth of the individual circuitry, but the 1222 is a very interesting one because it is the social channel of individuality. So it is this weird interface between the individual and the other. It's almost like if individual circuitry sent an emissary or a diplomat to speak on their behalf, a sleeper agent of sorts. That would be the 1222. I'm tribal like you guys. I'm collective like you guys. Don't you know? But secretly,
I'm mutating you all.
Secretly, they're trying to get their mutation across. Yeah. Yeah. So, any comments from our remote attendees?
Okay, I got something. So we talk. This game you're doing, you go on the opposition and then to the harmonic in the channel. Is that what you're talking about?
So we'll do 47 to 22. Next, we'll do 12. We'll do 11.
There's a significance to consecutive numbers when you go odd, even, odd, even, odd, even. And it seems very profound, like in the physical symmetry of the hexagram, but I don't hear any talk about any significance to that otherwise.
The win sequence, which is the actual number sequence 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the ordinal sequence, which is
not just that, but I mean, but it doesn't even seem to be significant from 1 and 2 to 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. It's just that there's an upside downness. The consecutive numbers are upside down. Oppositions are inside out.
Very interesting.
And then there's 6 examples of where they're both, like 11 and 12.
Oh, you're saying consecutive in the wheel is what you're saying then?
No, consecutive in numerically.
23, like numerically consecutive.
It would go odd to even. So there wouldn't be 22 to 23, it would be 23 to 24 and 21 to 22. They're upside down of each other.
Oh, okay. Very interesting. Like pairs in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I see.
I never noticed that. That's cool.
That's a really, really cool way of looking at it. Yeah, I see a nice graphic.
So each one is flipped of the last one.
Oh, yeah.
So that would explain why we've got 11 and 12 that are opposites because they're already symmetrical. So when you flip them upside down, or 63, 64.
They're one of the rare situations where they're oppositions and consecutive. There's 1 and 2, 63, 64, 29 and 20.
Yeah, 29.
27, 28, 29, 30, and then there's also 11, 12 now, right? So there's a few. No, I love this, Dave. This is a really, really interesting way of looking at it, and it does raise the question of the names, really the numbered names that we give to the gates, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, as opposed to the sequence of the Rave Mandala, the numbered sequence is from King Wen, and there are some mysteries in there, and yeah, like you're talking about, the mysteries of 29 and 30 being next to each other and then also being opposite.
Because they're symmetrical.
The symmetry of it, yeah. And the same with 27, 28. I do see, I see Ricky's comment, which was very similar to your comment, Johnny.
Yeah, I just
About
saw
22 not necessarily making sense as... so let's just see what Alok has to say about 22. So the polarity of gate 47 is gate 22, grace, the possibility of romance, the possibility of happiness, the possibility of social openness. But who would be open to someone who is oppressing you? Can you be open? Now this is the theme in relationships. Can you stay vulnerable when the other is not agreeing with you, when they're not in harmony? Or do you immediately go romantic or tough? You oppress me, I oppress you. You oppress me with yelling, I will oppress you with tears. You know. So in relationships there is such a charade, so much baby stuff, so little capacity to take responsibility for oneself. And so then he says, gate 22 is a manifesting gate. And this is the despair to know what to do to bring harmony back. So, yeah, it's basically kind of in a way, it looks like he's getting at where is the harmony, what do we do for harmony? Well, you need to find clarity first about your disharmony. You talk and you say, well, if you wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have done that. That doesn't help, right? That's not going to bring that peace and harmony. You don't start harmony by talking about the other. I guess you really start listening. That's not what he says here, but I guess it would make sense that 22, that's not the only listener. Obviously, we have 13, the listener of secrets and so on, but that 22 is a graceful listener in certain ways. Yeah, you bring harmony back by speaking about yourself. I shouldn't have said that. That was not nice. I didn't mean it. What I wanted to say was, I couldn't take it. But what you do is you speak about yourself, and it doesn't matter what, because you bring truth. Only truth brings back love, and only love brings back harmony. So you don't start finger pointing and accusing the other. So yeah, I mean, I would just say that the secret of the 47 and the 22 seems to be that that 47 gets a story, and then that 22 is able to listen to that story with grace, and they're both working towards the same shared goal in some way. It's like the 22 and the 12 share a goal, sure. That's the goal of the life force energy. The goal of romance or of, you know, connection to the other from the solar plexus to the throat, and being able to express that connection and to find happiness together in all of these 12-22 things. Because we know that happiness is in the individual stream of sexuality. Whereas the goal of the 64-47 seems to be to make sense of things, to understand what went wrong, to make sense of the images. And yet there's some hidden connection between 47 and 22 through the polarity, that they also have a shared goal, different than the goal of a channel, but that they're two approaches to the same thing or the same problem. Like, let's make sense of what went wrong and what do we do about it. Let's be a graceful listener, and let's hear them out and things like that. Let's charm them. Charm is in the 22.
I think that 2247 is also the process of alchemy, and it gives us the ability to sit with grace, to hear what is oppressive in order for that illumination of the next story to come. And 22 is not 12. 12 is the expression of that, but through vanity or purity, through that kind of infinity of energy. But 22 is just the emotional, right, capacity to hear or to listen, and then to socially connect in that way. But I think that it is the secret of alchemy. It's the ability to sit and watch the base metal turn to gold with patience, with the emotional purity of the divine. I think 22 kind of feels like that. And so 22 feels like the gift to 47's oppression. It's the bedfellows of alchemy. Um, yeah, I think it tells the story of how to be in the world as yourself, as the divine, through not understanding why or what or who, or the oppression of the confusion that exists also in being human.
I always see it in the context of peace and anger, and because it's so acoustic, it's individual, and it's so attuned to the speaker. It's funny that Alok begins 22 by saying, well, we call it grace, but every time you hear a keynote, you must look at its opposite. So it's also the gate of disgrace. And it's the gate of hearing or not wanting to hear. So just because it can listen doesn't mean it will. It's, I don't want to hear you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want you to talk to me. Just hearing your voice makes me angry. And boy, can I tell you what I've experienced of that with my 1222 electromagnetics, particularly with people who have an undefined solar plexus, like myself, and amplifying that, where you're just going along and then suddenly something went wrong, you don't know what, it spikes and locks and it's plateauing in a different frequency, and all of the atmosphere is sucked out of the room, and no matter what candles or soft music you're playing, you're never going to get it back. Suddenly the wine turns sour, suddenly you're in this other world and there's no way out of it, and it's a world of silent treatment.
Oppressive.
It's the fourth gate of deafness. The gate of not listening.
Yeah. And so what Alok tells us is that in gate 22, there is an engine connected to the throat, therefore anger is rapidly there. So we can have a flash of anger. And I've really experienced this personally, where that flash can appear out of the blue, and it can just suddenly go from conversation to silence. Suddenly there's nothing to say, there's nothing you can say. You're not in the mood to listen to them, they're not in the mood to listen to you. The mood is gone. And it's asking, how long will I have to continue listening to this? Yes, it's part of a social channel, this channel of openness. It's the design of the social being, and it's an emotional gate, and in the fluctuation of mood, it's also the antisocial being, someone who doesn't want to hang out with anyone, doesn't want to listen to anyone, who doesn't think anyone can be interesting. That's the not self-manifester. They don't want to listen, they don't want to inform, they don't care, they don't believe someone could really care for them, they don't believe that they could care for someone.
This is my cross, by the way. We're talking about me right now.
The cross of informing, yeah. Yeah, which contains the 1222 in the cross itself. Yeah. And is there anyone worth listening to? The grace is listening to someone and feeling like you are hearing yourself. That's when you actually experience the grace. And I've had this experience. I mean, I'm a 12 and I'll get lit up by 22, and I think all of us can kind of relate to that magic of hearing someone say something that you've thought but couldn't put into words, of hearing someone speak to you as if they are you speaking to yourself, and just feeling that deep connection and validation even.
I think it's kind of interesting coming from like an individual circuit, like the grace coming from listening to someone and making it seem like yourself, like another individual who's just like you in some aspect.
Yeah, well, it reminds me of what Edward Edinger said, which is that we all ultimately, if we leave behind our family and our religion and these different structures that make us kind of, I guess, what we would call tribal structures in human design, we are ultimately alone in the dark night of the soul and face to face with the alienation of being all alone in the world. And from there, the only step forward is to realize there are others who are also all alone in the world. And even though they cannot communicate their experience to us and we cannot communicate ours to them, we have the shared experience of being unable to communicate our experience. So we have a shared sympathy simply because neither of us are able to truly express the innermost of our interiority. Now the harmonic is gate 12. It is called standstill. And Alak tells us the standstill means the power to bring the emotions to a standstill. This is passion. Have you seen two people that fell in love and talk to each other endlessly, and they're there in the restaurant and they don't hear anything? It's like they're in another galaxy. Yeah. Its polarity is gate 47. And gate 47, as we looked at, is oppression. Someone talks to you in a certain way and it makes you feel uncomfortable, and immediately you are oppressed. You want to kick them, but you don't. You just feel like kicking them. This is like what Deleuze said about why he can't stand philosophical discussion, right? He wants a real conversation, but a conversation is something different, because when you're discussing a topic and taking sides of the topic and so on, people end up saying things that are so banal. They've been said 100 times before. You've already thought of them years ago. You've heard them years ago. They've been repeated ad infinitum. And you're so sick of them, but they're not wrong. But you can't tell them what they're saying is stupid, so you end up telling them what they're saying is wrong. But they're not wrong, and so you end up having an invalid argument, but it's because of the social politeness. You can't just say, yes, I've heard that before. Right. You know, that would be quite rude. So you end up with this oppression, and you know, it's really getting stuck in that. And then part of Gate 22 being individual is its indecisiveness. We know that indecisiveness is such a quality of individuality, and the question being, shall I listen or shall I not? Shall I continue listening? Do I want to hear any more? Why don't they just shut up? Does the other person even mean what they're saying? Does it even have anything to do with me? This is grace. What other people that speak to you say to you, what your mind makes out of that. I don't know exactly how that's grace, but maybe just the grace of accepting that that's the movement of life and not fighting against it and finding peace in that.
Yeah, openness, right?
Yeah.
And just the indefiniteness is something it shares with 47.
These two gates belong to the cross called the cross of rulership, which he would always calls the cross of sovereignty. And it's one of our few places of sovereignty, that only you can decide who you listen to, who you hear. You can appear to listen to someone while not be listening. That's part of your sovereignty. It's like, I'm stuck here, you're talking to me, but I'm not actually listening to you.
And you can't oppress that, right? You know, it's your sovereign territory.
Yeah, like I'm free from your oppression because you think I'm listening, but I'm actually just smiling and nodding. So that brings us to 12.
Should we make this the last pair, the 12 and 11? 12
Sure.
and 11,
Yeah, that'd be great. So 12 is
Yin 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 yang 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 and yang 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 yin yang yang.
yeah, it is. It really is. You know, I guess 12 and 11 are also kind of special as this midpoint between
one and
shuffling. Yeah, but between the 1, 2, and the 63, 64, somehow 12 and 11 ended up as the interesting midpoint.
Earth over heaven and heaven over earth.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot to say about it, but I'll just say that that there is an interesting mystery here, that 12 being part of this manifestor channel, the 1222, and then 11, which is not part of a manifestor channel. It's a projected channel, and yet Gate 11 has the keynote of peace, which is one of the keynotes for the manifestor.
And it's directly after 47 in terms of circuitry.
Right. It's you're right. It's also in the ajna. It's part of Yeah.
if it,
I love both of those points that you guys just made.
Well, yeah, and I think just even having a gate navigator that allows you to navigate to the next gate in the circuitry, the next gate in the wheel, the next gate numerically, the harmonic, the opposition. I mean, it's kind of just like a fun board game of making these moves, journey through the wheel.
Right. Labyrinth.
But yeah, 12 being. I mean, what is it really here to do? It's here to articulate. One's own individual expression in a way that it can reach the other, and it's really where we get the incredible beauty of language itself. I saw a funny meme. Von Paul sent me a meme. He said, "There's already millions of monkeys and millions of typewriters, and we already wrote Shakespeare. So what's the point?" There's always that question: if you put a million monkeys in a room with a million typewriters, will you get Shakespeare? Apparently, because we already did. So we're already there. That's what 12 is. It's the monkey that can speak. Right?
it also seems to be where we get facial expressions, since birds, fish, reptiles have 1/8. What a mammal gains, and we can see a dog make different faces at us, is the 12, the hanging 12.
I love that, right? Because there is bird song, but there's not
Bird
facial.
face,
There's not bird face. Exactly.
Yeah.
Birds all kind of work.
No fish face, no lizard face. They're always poker face.
Yeah.
You have no idea what's going on behind there. But even a deer, not just domesticated animals, but wild mammals, kind of wear their feelings on their face a little bit, or whatever their version of feelings is.
I love that. Well, this has been a fun journey, and thank you to Aloknand Diaz, wherever he is now, probably teaching. He teaches all the time. And well, actually, it's the middle of the night. I hope he's enjoying a restful evening. But regardless, that was fun getting a little bit of his take on the gates, and then doing our own interpretive work as well. So let's do this again sometime. I really like this journey around the wheel, and I'd love to make a gate explorer that lets you navigate in that way. So thank you all. Unless there's any final comments, I will see you all soon. And thank you for joining.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.